Everyone pictures the first artist as a caveman in France. He's wrong on all three counts. It wasn't France, it probably wasn't a man, and the very first painters may not have been human at all. 45,000 years ago, on a cave wall in Indonesia, someone painted a pig. It's the oldest cave painting we have ever found. Now, everyone assumes these were decoration, or a way to record the hunt. They weren't. Not even close. The real ones were painted half a mile underground, in the dark, where nobody lived and almost nobody would ever see them. By the end of this, you'll know why someone would crawl into that deadly dark to paint where no one would ever look. And honestly, nobody fully agrees. It's one of the strangest questions in all of prehistory. When you think cave art, you think Europe. Lascaux, in France, with its beautiful painted bulls, about 17,000 years old. Or Chauvet, older still, full of lions and rhinos. 36,000 years? For 100 years, that was the whole story. Art was born in Ice Age Europe, and then Indonesia happened. In 2017, an archaeologist crawled into a cave on Sulawesi and found that pig. A warty pig, painted in red ochre, life-sized, staring off the wall at nothing. And here's the real thing, not a doodle of it. The actual painting, 45,000 years old. That pig is older than everything in France by thousands of years. It's the oldest picture of a real thing found anywhere on Earth, so the whole map just flipped. The cradle of art was never Europe. And get this, it goes further still. In 2024, in the same region, they dated a whole scene, not one animal, an actual scene, little human figures and a wild pig together, doing something. 51,200 years old. That is the oldest story any human has ever told, on any wall, anywhere. And here's the detail I need you to hold on to. Some of those figures next to the pig aren't quite human. Part person, part animal. Remember them. They come back at the very end and they change everything. Because if the oldest art isn't in Europe, one question gets much louder. How far back does this really go? Further than that pig. A lot further. Because before anyone in Indonesia painted anything, the urge was already alive. In Africa. On the coast of South Africa, there's a cave called Blombos, and in a layer of dirt 73,000 years old, someone found a little flake of stone. On it, in red ochre, a simple crosshatch pattern. A few lines, crossed by a few more. Look, it doesn't seem like much. It honestly looks like a hashtag, but it's the oldest drawing ever found. And it beats the oldest cave paintings by 30,000 years. 30,000 years is longer than every European cave painting put together. Somebody sat on that beach, picked up an ochre crayon, and made a pattern on purpose. Not a picture of anything, a design, made for its own sake. And that quietly changes the whole thing. The urge to make a mark didn't begin in Europe. It didn't even begin with caves. It's old, it's human, and it started in Africa. But the question of who was holding that ochre only gets stranger. You know the famous ones. The red hands. Someone put a hand flat on the rock, took a mouthful of red pigment, and blew. Lift the hand away, and you've left a perfect outline. A signature from the deep past. And these are real. Human hands, on a wall, tens of thousands of years ago. For the longest time, we pictured the artist as a man. The hunter. The shaman. The big impressive guy. Then an archaeologist named Dean Snow did something almost too simple. He measured the fingers. Because in men and women, the fingers run to slightly different lengths. Ring finger against index finger. The ratio shifts. He measured stencils across caves in France and Spain, and about 3 out of 4 came back female. 3 and 4. So the lone male genius we all imagined? Probably backwards. A lot of the first artists on Earth were women. Now, is the method perfect? No, Snow said so himself, but it's the best read we have, and it points hard away from the caveman in your head. So we've moved the art out of Europe, back into Africa, and out of the hands of the men. And the biggest twist is still coming. Because some of these hands are simply too old to be us. This next one is the strangest of the lot, so let me be really careful with it. In 3 caves in Spain, there are a few marks. A red ladder shape, a hand stencil, some rock, painted red, nothing that stops you in your tracks. But scientists dated the thin crust of rock that had grown over the top of the paint, and it came back at more than 64,000 years old. Sit with that for a second. 64,000 years. That is 20,000 years before the first modern human ever set foot in Europe. We weren't there yet. So who made them? The only people in Europe that early were Neanderthals, which would mean the first painters weren't our species at all. Now I said I'd be careful, so here's the honest part. This date is argued over, hard. Dating the crust instead of the paint is disputed. Some think the rock is younger than it looks. Others say the case for Neanderthals still isn't proven. So this is the leading reading. It is not a settled fact. But if it holds, it's staggering. It would mean the urge to paint is older than us, that we inherited it from someone else entirely. And that makes the real question louder, not quieter. Why? Why would any of them, us or them, risk anything to do this at all? Okay, so humans, and maybe more than humans, were painting far further back than anyone thought. But I've been holding back the strangest fact of all, and nobody tells you this one. The great cave paintings are not where people lived. People lived at the mouth of the cave, in the daylight, where it's warm and safe. That's where the fires were. The tools, the bones, the mess of daily life. The paintings aren't there. The paintings are deep, way back, past the last of the light into the black. Take Nio in the French Pyrenees. To reach the main paintings, you walk 800 meters into the mountain. That's half a mile, underground, in the dark. And honestly, Nio is one of the easy ones. At other caves you crawl, on your belly, through gaps so tight you breathe out to fit, in total darkness, lit by a single flame of burning animal fat that could die at any second. One wrong turn down there, and you don't come back. You die alone, in the cold and the black. And that is where they chose to paint, not by the door, where everyone would see it. Half a mile in, where almost no one ever would. So think about what that rules out. It isn't decoration. You don't decorate a room no one walks into. It isn't a record of the hunt for the village to admire. Nobody could ever find it. They risked dying to make these in the one place they were guaranteed to stay hidden. Decoration cannot explain that. Nothing simple can. So what on earth is worth that? Here's the part I've been holding back. There's a leading theory for this, and it is genuinely strange. It comes from a researcher named David Lewis Williams, and it starts with what happens to a human brain deep underground. No light, no sound, no sense of up or down. Only you, a tiny flame, and a wall. In a place like that, the mind slips. People start to hallucinate. They always have. And Lewis Williams argues the painters weren't decorating the wall. They were seeing through it. To them, the rock wasn't solid. It was a membrane, a thin skin between our world and the world of the spirits. And the animals were already on the other side, inside the stone. So the painter wasn't inventing a bull. He was reaching through the rock to pull one out. The handprint isn't a signature. It's a hand pressed flat against the membrane, reaching in. And remember those not quite human figures from the very start? The part person, part animal ones? This is why they matter. They are the oldest pictures of something that has never existed. Nobody had ever seen a thing that was half human and half animal. Somebody imagined it, then painted it. And that, right there, is the whole point. That is a human mind holding a world that isn't there. Now, is the spirit world part proven? No, it's the leading theory, and it's argued over too. We can't crawl inside a 50,000-year-old mind and check, but every explanation ever offered agrees on one thing. These were never mere decoration. They are the first proof that a person could picture something that wasn't in front of them. A world that wasn't there. You do it every time you read a book, or remember someone who's gone, or picture tomorrow. It started in the dark, on a wall, more than 50,000 years ago, with a hand reaching into the rock for something that was never really there. The people who did this are long gone. The question they left is still wide open. So if you like the questions nobody thinks to ask, subscribe. There's a whole cave of them down here, and I am not done digging. Filed under questions nobody thought to ask. That's the archive for today.